Hi, everybody. This is Gaynor Milky for Moving the Needle, which is digital transformation in the accounting profession. And I'm joined by my co-host, John Higgins and Christine Triantos today. So, John, do you want to take it away and introduce yourself, and then we'll pass it over to Christine?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today, and really honored to be here today with Gaynor. And we've got a great guest with Christine. So really looking forward to her insight into how to help firms develop their CAS practice. So let's get her rolling.
Yeah. Well, super excited to have you, Christine. And if you want to just give us a little bit of your background so that we figured out before we started recording that you and John have a lot of overlap. So that was really cool.
The Video Alumni Club. Yeah, no, thank you both
Yeah.
for having me. Been in public accounting, started my career at BDO in 1996, and just, the whole gamut of journey throughout those 30 years. But started our CAS practice about 15 years ago and was a regional CAS partner and also manage our national technology team. But I left there in December of 2023 to start Infinite Advisors because I've been also teaching the CPA.com CAS workshop for the last 7, 8 years, and just found that, firms just struggle with standing up CAS, from staffing to training to pricing to technology, and technology being the key piece of that. And so started Infinite Advisors. So we consult practitioners in that space, and then also launched Infinite Ties a couple months ago, which is a CAS community subscription-based model that has vendor corner, training, and resource documents, best practices, and tips. So yeah, that's my background. So thank you so much for allowing me to join you guys today.
Yeah. Well, I think
Absolutely.
one of the reasons why I thought, you needed to join us and kind of share your wealth of knowledge is really because, as you said, for CAS practitioners, they struggle to have the resources to both start their firms as a firm leader, but then also the staff as well. How can they, you know, kind of upskill themselves, especially in the face of the changing landscape of the profession? And CAS is like the highest growth area in accounting right now. So it's definitely something that there's a lot of people looking for guidance on. So, I mean, from your perspective and a high level, what do you see as the digital transformation or the journey that people should be on who are operating CAS firms and working in them?
Yeah, it's so different in CAS, and I'm sure, John, you can attest. So what I think is so different from CAS is that it's just highly leveraged with a lot of tech products. So you have a tech stack of 15 to 30 different products depending on your industries. But a lot of the training also that's different in CAS, and the transformation is just still so based in audit and tax. And so trying to get, the industry to pivot to CAS and the outsourced accounting space, and really focus on the training that's necessary uh, to just upskill the CAS teams and the technology within that. Because, within audit and tax, not that it's not changing with AI too, but you just have some core primary products. And in CAS, it's there's so many out there, and it changes daily, weekly, monthly, and somebody's always entering the space. So um yeah, you just, within CAS, you don't really have a CAS practice unless you're adopting those various technology products. Without that, that's not truly outsourced accounting.
And I found that it seems like the firms that are trying to start a CAS practice, well, one, those who just leave and start their own practice have an advantage because they can start fresh, right? It's always that challenge of the legacy practice model, the legacy culture, and the legacy software. So, do you have any recommendations on how to address some of those challenges? If a firm wants to say, we got to get into this, what's the best way for us to get started?
Yeah, and again, because the tech stack is so large, it's really about prioritizing, what there is a priority of products that you implement first that are kind of like the no-brainers, right? Automated accounts payable, accounts receivable. You have a ton of now what we call either behind the scene, your secret sauce kind of tech products versus what's client facing and maybe what's white labeled, because there's a lot of just efficiencies that you gain, right? That we always say that's the firms, the practitioners' margins versus, your clients. But when you have that secret sauce product, you're just really prioritizing what comes first and what's kind of just easy to implement too. But you have the online APAR, you have spend management. And spend management is huge right now because not only is that, your corporate credit cards, your expense reports, but also getting into how companies are deploying cards and controlling the spend within each of like divisions, locations, and different areas. So that's a big piece. And then you have in the FP&A, the financial planning analysis realm, you just have a ton of products right now. That's the KPIs, the dashboards, the insights, the industry, standards, comparing that, for your clients. So all of those things that would normally have maybe been done manually now with a tech product is allowing people to implement this technology, but then also have more time for the advisory, right? And so really it's about prioritizing the tech and, what is your team spending a lot of time doing manually that you could just, it's highest and best use of your team and the efficiencies that are gained.
Wow. So just a few things, right?
Just a few
Um,
things.
so what are you seeing? You have exposure to a lot of CAS practices now with Infinite Ties and just your own work doing the advisory to those firms. Like, are there specific areas of what you described that you think people are getting stuck on? It
I,
seems like if people are starting a CAS practice, it would be easy to just go and get everything, right? Or think that you need to have everything to start with. Like, is that the case? Or is it better to create a plan and then go sort of piece by piece by piece and implement it? And I would say both on the firm side, but also on the client side, because if you're trying to provide services to clients and you're changing your tech or you're giving them too many tools to utilize, I could see that that might not offer the best experience.
yeah, there's definitely a roadmap to it, right? But where I have found that most firms struggle is in the tech area, right? They're brilliant practitioners, um, and they're also super busy, right? And so they don't want to learn the tech. They're like, I don't have time to learn the tech, nor is it really kind of my lane. And so I think that that's the part where most firms and practitioners struggle is in the tech space. And so it's just, again, finding the products. There's so many vendors now, and they're very, I would say, the majority of them are very supportive, right? So you can call them, they'll help you stand it up, they'll walk you through everything. There's training. But so it's either finding a tech champion that you can have within your practice or finding a third party tech champion, which is what we do at Infinite Advisors as well, is to say, let us just help you stand up that technology so that you don't have to learn it. You will learn it as you use the product. We'll do all the administrative, all the stand up, do everything for you and train you on what you need to know on a daily basis just to keep your client running and implement those efficiencies. And so then we teach them along the way and it's digestible, right? It's not just here's all of this change right away and right now. And then also same with the clients is just not taking them through, here's the entire suite of these products. It's just, what do you need to know right now today to process your payables, to process your payroll, to do whatever it is you're doing, your financials. And so it's just taking it more in smaller bites that I think is resonating with firms more, and also, like I said, embracing the support and training that the software vendors are providing as well.
Christine, you talked about like different workflows, spend management, for example, being a pretty important area. Do you think it's necessary for a firm to kind of cover the whole gamut of accounting applications, or can you have a successful practice? Let's say, I just want to be a specialist in spend management, get a good application or two, and just focus on that. Is that a viable route to take, or do you think it's got to be more of the whole package?
I think that it generally has to be more of the whole package. However, and like there's different rabbit holes down that question that you asked, John, right? But I think it generally has to be the whole package, aside from a lot of different practitioners that are now not doing what the accounting and bookkeeping pieces of it, the compliance piece, and they're outsourcing that and then just taking the information and providing more of the high level advisory services. But to take out just spend management and just focus on that, that doesn't really resonate and work well, because the client's relying on you for to be their basically, in-house accounting team,
Yeah.
if that's how they're set up. So they're just also interconnected that I don't think that works well.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So, do you have particular tools you recommend, or are you like agnostic to the tools?
That's it. I love this question because I use the agnostic word all the time. We have a CAS community within Infinite Ties, and we have a vendor corner. One of the facets is a vendor corner, and we pride ourselves on being vendor agnostic, right? We have a lot of vendors that come to us and just say, "Hey, we'd love to do a revenue share program with you," and we have declined all revenue share because we're really trying to bring what's best to the community as a whole, right? And once you get into that rev share, then your objectives change and what you promote changes. And really, I want the best vendors and the best products. And so, and it changes all the time, right? And then there's somebody new that comes in, and you don't want to be the early adopter, but you don't want to be lagging either. But when it comes to just different products, yeah, there's a lot of different things out there. Obviously, Bill, which used to be Bill.com, and it's hard to change that name, but
Yeah,
that
right.
they're the prominent, player in that accounts payable market. And spend management, Navan, there's a really great product about Navan right now. And so it gets into these vendors where you're like, this one does this, but doesn't do this, this is it. And so
Yeah.
you have to weigh those. And then in the FP&A space, I really, really like Reach Reporting. It's kind of built on like an Excel platform and does a lot of consolidated financial statements and multi-currency. But then there's just all of these templates that are just set where once you connect your GL system, you literally can click a button and have kind of like 10-page reports at various different templates that are just set up. So, and then we couple that with like a giraffe with FP&A to run scenarios, because once you start getting into that higher level advisory type product, you have it's really being there and their outsourced CFO, right, and providing them information and giving them things that they can just utilize to make business decisions faster, right? We're like,
Mhm.
we're not, you shouldn't go in and say, here's what you should do, but here's your proactive, forward thinking, here's what this means, telling the story. And I think a really big important piece of this is what I see a lot of firms do is they get so enthralled with these tech products, right? And these dashboards and KPIs, and then they just send them to the client, right? And the
Right.
client gets this information and they're like, that's pretty, but I don't know what this means, right? And so when we talk about digital transformation and tech, it's just so important that as firms evolve and upskill their teams, that they're teaching them what this data means, right? can you tell the story? What, can you say, here's where it looks like, your revenues increasing or declining, or what could you do internally that could, you know, catapult their cash receipt cycle, their cash cycle. So there's just a lot there, but it really is embracing the tech, but also learning how to be an advisor.
Mhm.
Yeah, I found I do a presentation on using generative AI in your CAS practice, and it's a great tool for that part you're talking about. Okay, so let's say I have a client that's opening up 8 car washes. Well, I don't know anything about car washes. I'm a CPA, but I know all that's the technical side of it. So you can ask it to help me understand what would be important to a car wash entrepreneur with 8 washes, and help me identify what would be a good way to approach them to explain their financial data. I find that could be a very helpful tool.
Yeah,
Go
and
ahead.
like, I mean, and I'd love to, I mean, you and I could sit and talk about tech all day. I'd love to pick your brain on like that whole AI piece too, because, I think it's just so important that you're able to communicate and tell the story to the clients, because AI is in everyone's face, right? And it's
Yeah.
getting to your clients um, faster than you think too. And so, what are you doing to put yourself in front of that client with the AI, so that they're viewing you as the trusted advisor, and they're thinking, oh, yep, they're all over it. They're going to help me do this, rather than, do I need to ask them, or this product is giving me this information on my business. Maybe I don't need them, and so it's just such a fine balance.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
think
know what you're
that's
seeing, John, but I'd be interested in learning a lot about that from you too.
So that's, I think, a really important point is being able to have those conversations with clients about where the authority of the AI begins and ends, and how are you using it in your practice. But I also wanted to back up a little bit because you talked about a lot of different tools and being able to have the advisory conversations and the FP&A and all of those pieces and parts. That can seem overwhelming to have this like jigsaw puzzle that you basically got to put together. So do you have any kind of best practices for as firms that either are already established or are getting started with, like, one, when do you find the time to consider all of this? And then how do you go about selecting like, it literally is almost like a box of chocolates, right? Like, let's pick the best ones, but how do you
Take a
know which
bite and put
ones
it
to
back.
buy?
Take a bite and put it back.
Right.
I mean, again, I think it's the prioritizing the top and the core and the basics. Those are just kind of like your no-brainers. Those are, we have to utilize these products. And that's how we get to with clients is, those barriers to entry is, we have to implement this technology in order for us to provide services to you, right? Because we can't do these things manually. But aside from identifying a tech champion, it's just really hard. I tell leaders, if you don't have a tech champion, it has to be you. Like, you have to embrace this. However, I do think though, we can do a better job of incentivizing even the CAS teams to say, hey, your goal this year, like one of your goals is to go find a product, or here's the product that we've identified, and you be the tech champion, and you learn it, and you bring it back to the team, and you train the team. And that really empowers, the team as well. And I did that with my team for a lot of years, and they seem to love that. So it is just not biting off more than you can chew, and not being overwhelmed with the tech, but having a good strategic plan over, the course of, it takes several years. Here's how we're going to adopt this. Here's how we're going to do it. And honestly, when I started, we set up all of the tech products for our firm. So, we learned on, let's use it on ourselves. And then we can just get all of the little things that matter and don't matter, and questions that everyone's going to have before we actually deploy this to clients. Because you don't want to seem like you don't know your products, obviously, when you're deploying that to the client, because you want to obviously gain their trust and keep their trust with that. So I would say in small bites, however, with a very definitive strategic plan
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and
Is that
roadmap.
what you're seeing too, John? With firms that are
Yeah,
being successful?
yeah, because it is a lot. It's a lot to bite off, and the old one of the
Mhm.
age old problems is always, well, we want to have you folks work on this CAS business model for us, but by the way, it's busy season, so come on back, and we'll pick this up again in the spring or whenever. I don't know. Do you still see that as a big problem, Christine, in the market?
It's funny. I just talked to a firm yesterday and they just said the same thing, John. Like, we're in the middle of busy season. We can't think about this right now. But we also say too for CAS, like tax season is selling season because you're in front of
Yeah.
your, clients. And so what are those questions that you're asking that can, you know, move them into those CAS advisory services? But also when I talk about strategic plans, it's and I just said that, like I said, I just said this yesterday, there's still a plan of which clients that you can implement tech for, right? Because you have to have them on fixed fees. If you implement all these efficiencies in this technology and it saves you time, you obviously don't want to decrease your revenue, right? And
Right.
so getting them to repaper if they're not on fixed fees and getting them to a fixed fee takes a good, conversation, repapering, a good 30 to 90 days at a minimum to get that done to then implement the tech. So if you're not starting those processes, even when you're in the midst of busy season, you're not going to be where you want to be in that downtime in the summer if you
Right.
don't start that sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And when
So
you're advising the firms, do you have a preference, like in terms of have recommended that they go and deliver or offer this service to existing clients where they have relationships that can be good and bad, right? Existing relationships, or do you recommend they go off and use this new service to get some new clients and start fresh? You have
I
a
love,
preference?
love, love that question because that's where people get a little hung up too and stuck because they say, I have this write up practice or I have this practice. And so now how do I take what you are saying and convert all my clients into this new model? I'm like, okay, stop. Because that doesn't, that doesn't generally work. Not that it can't work, but um, really where we consult firms is to say, let's just act like you're starting this practice from scratch today. And how would we build and design that so that what you sell tomorrow is on this new model? What you learn along the way as this new model, then you can say, okay, now I really understand what clients that I have that actually could fit this model that I could convert to that would, you know, um, need these advisory services and all of these different things. And so that's really how we consult because people get stuck of how do I take my client base and transform this? And that's also overwhelming.
Right.
I have a question then just on that word overwhelming. Do you have any tips on how practitioners can, beat that overwhelm and what, as far as skill set, I know that's a big thing that you're doing at Infinite Ties in the training community is really trying to give CAS practitioners of all levels education that is going to prepare them for like the new age of CAS because it's always evolving. So what do you see as some of the key skill sets that CAS practitioners should be thinking about now that maybe they weren't thinking about before?
I don't know if it's that they weren't thinking about it before. I think where practitioners get is that, you have the managers, senior managers, directors, and they're providing the advisory services. And you have, the up and coming staff, seniors, and in all of that in between. And it's how you're training those advisory services, right? But where we find is that they just don't have time.
Mm.
They're like, Yes, I've been meaning to train my team, and I've been in John, I'm sure you know this, but with your training background, I they have it and they know it and it's in their head, but they don't have time to, put it into content and take the time to train. And this is what happens with all of us and all of our firms, right? Where you're just like, oh, I'm right up against this client deadline. I really need to take the time to train the team on blah, 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 but I don't have time. So I'm just going to do it myself. And I'm just going to do it myself. And I'll get to them, And so that mentality, I think, just keeps happening. And so really what we found with firms too is that just like let's level set your staff, your seniors, make sure that they're doing things all the same way. They know. And what I really love about our CAS community, so we have a forum and we have training, and members can take training anonymously, because I feel like people think, oh my gosh, my manager probably thinks I should know this, and I don't, and I can't ask this question. So we make this a very safe place for people to ask the questions and take the training without anybody knowing. And so with that, our training, like what CAS needs and what we provide too, is just into that advisory. So we have like a 4-part gap training. It's audit readiness. What does that mean? What's the terminology? What are you looking at? We've done training, and this is what CAS needs, right? How do you tie your financial statements to your tax returns? What are the M1 adjustments? All of the things that are coming from other areas too, from audit readiness and from tax, and how to work with your third-party audit teams, right? And what are they going to ask? And what can you push back? And what can you push back on the tax team that really shouldn't be a book adjustment? And, how are you taking this information and how are you conveying this to the client from an advisory perspective? And even then you move into client's advisory of, when you're looking at mergers and acquisitions and they're wanting to sell their business, and how are you helping them prepare for that? And then, you work with a lot of private equity firms where they're acquiring businesses and they're like, okay, here's this new business. I need you to go and do all these opening entries and get this all done. And here's our purchase agreement. So it's starting to train those types of details into CAS, which I think is really important. And it's not coming from, I feel like a lot of people try to build audit and tax training and then pull pieces out for CAS rather than building it specifically for CAS.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really all about creating this holistic CAS model, and it's not for the faint of heart. It doesn't sound like, it's just there's so many different directions that you can take a CAS practice. You can have a niche in 2 or 3 areas, or you can, still maintain something general. But I know we interviewed a couple of tax firm practitioners a few weeks ago, and what they said when it came to technology transformation in their firms was the people were that was one of the most difficult and challenging parts of change management piece. Do you see that as a challenge in CAS firms as well?
The people, like,
As
yeah,
far as putting new tech in, that there's sometimes some resistance to it.
yeah, I mean, it's listen, it's hard, especially, the larger of the firm, the harder it is to move the needle, right? And so, did it pass, your national IT protocol? Did your national legal team agree to the terms? What does that look like? But from a staff perspective of implementing tech, yeah, I mean, it's hard and everyone's resource constrained. And I always say, we're fishing out of the same pool for, the talent in this market. However, and this is my soapbox, because I wholeheartedly believe this when it comes to tech and implementing efficiencies and staffing. I really challenge firms to say, let's just assess your current client base, because a lot of times they have the wrong clients. They're not profitable. They're low margin. And so when you want to bring staff in, all you're doing is adding cost to something that doesn't really have high margins. So create capacity, do the things that we were just saying. Let's repaper your products to fixed fees. Every time you get a new client, let's have the conversation with a low margin client that we need to double, triple your fees. I'm so sorry. But, and if that doesn't work for you, we totally understand, which I did all the time and didn't ever lose a client that way. But then you start upskilling, getting them on fixed fees, and that's where the tech comes in, right? And when the tech right now is super exciting to staff, for the people that are coming into accounting, especially too. It's fun. They love it, but they also want to have time to learn and embrace it. And this is another like major thing for me when it comes to technology too, is you you can't have your cake and eat it too with firms where they say, hey, we want you to embrace this technology and implement this because we're going to gain all of these efficiencies. However, we're still going to tie your charge hours to your compensation and your bonus and your promotions. So basically, you're asking them to give up a lot of their time, but keep their charge hours. But did you create the pipeline for them to take on more work, right? And do you have that? And so it's such a conflicting message, I think, to staff to say adopt tech, but keep your charge hours and keep everything going. And so it's definitely a psychology shift that I think that we have to have within, if especially if you're within a public accounting firm. Obviously, it's easier if you're a sole practitioner or you have your own company where you can be a little bit more flexible with that. But it creates fear. It doesn't foster it just doesn't foster implementing technology for efficiencies.
Mhm.
As I'm learning about the services you offer, Christine, I'm thinking of the analogy of a fitness coach, right? You need, if you have a fitness coach, you got a much better chance of reaching your goals, and the fitness coach can help you lay out your plan and then be honest with you about what it takes to get there. And I think, that's exactly what's needed in the marketplace, is something like what you're offering. If I understand it correctly, that, you can help them develop their plan and then keep them on track to make sure they're achieving their goals.
Yeah.
Is that a
And
fair
there's so many
assessment of?
pieces to it. Yeah, right. Yeah. And that's why it is a roadmap, and there's so many things to consider. Um, and we always like to say we were early adopters, so we just failed a lot. We did everything wrong, right? And like, okay, back up, pivot, change. That didn't work. That didn't work. And so, we like to say we just we love to consult because we did a lot of things wrong.
Right. And so you can help people avoid that and shortcut to success. So I think I mean, that's a great service to the accounting community. And, I just think in the face of all of this, the new technology is so exciting. AI is so exciting, but then the reality is you have to be able to use it productively in your practice and profitably as well, right? Like you can't just keep adding tech cost without, as you said, really reassessing and reimagining what products and clients you're going to be serving with that tech. Like, how does
Exactly.
it make sense? Not tech for tech's sake, but tech as a strategic part of your overall business strategy, right?
Right. And again, how it impacts your staff and how it impacts your margins and how it, all of the things. So definitely lots to think of.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing like a smidge of what you know and what you and John both know from all of the time booked at BDO and everywhere else. You guys are on the education circuit like there's no tomorrow at all of the conferences and state societies and everything. And I think the CAS community is so much better off for having both of you to support it for sure.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Christine. Really appreciate it. And where can our listeners learn more about your services?
So we have our CAS community is infinite-ties.com. And so and we the price point's really, really low,
Really reasonable.
really reasonable. And so again, we're just here. We're very passionate. We love this. We love this community. We're excited about this space. And so, yeah, would love to work with people, and they can reach out to me too. I see, it's my last name,
We'll
C
put the
Triantos.
we'll
Yeah.
put all of the contact info
Okay.
below the video, and then we can also add it at the end too. So
That's perfect. Yeah. I'm love talking to people, love to help people. So thank you both so much for having me too. This was fun.
oh well, thank you. We
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
it.
you. Keep up the good work.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.